All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is David Mayorga. I'm Associate Dean for Public Affairs here at the Princeton School of Public and International Affairs. We're really excited to host today's conversation on Iran-Israel tensions. We have an esteemed panel of guests with us today, as well as our very own Ambassador Daniel Kurtzer, who is the S. Daniel Abraham Professor of Middle East Policy Studies at Princeton School of Public and International Affairs. During his 29-year career in the Foreign Service, Ambassador Kurtzer served as the U.S. Ambassador to Israel and as the United States Ambassador to Egypt, among a number of many other accolades and titles. I'm going to hand it over to Ambassador Kurtzer to kick off today's discussion and introduce our other esteemed guests. We will take questions in the Q&A chat, and then we'll go through them once the initial discussion has completed. With that, Ambassador Kurtzer, the floor is yours.
Thank you, David, and welcome to everybody. I am particularly excited to be joined by old friends and probably the best people that we could consult on Israel-Iran. It's a crisis that's ongoing. We could do this probably 5 times a year, but it's a particularly ripe moment given the recent exchange of missiles and fire between the two countries directly, and the proxy war among some of Iran's allies in the region and Israel. What I'm going to do is to introduce the 3 panelists, and then I will start out with a question for each, and then we'll do some follow-up. I suppose the panelists will want to interact with each other and respond to what they're saying. They've been asked to be as comprehensive and as brief as possible so that we can maximize the number of questions we get to. As David indicated, please put your questions in the Q&A function, and we will curate them and try to get to as many as we can. So to launch, let me just introduce briefly. This could take up the whole hour, but I will be very brief. Robin Wright is a foreign policy analyst, author, and journalist, joint fellow at the U.S. Institute of Peace and the Woodrow Wilson International Center. She has reported from 144 countries on 7 continents for every major outlet: the New Yorker, the Washington Post, New York Times, Foreign Affairs, and so forth. Among her books are Rock the Kasbah, Rage and Rebellion Across the Islamic World, and the ongoing Iran primer, Power, Politics, and U.S. Policy, which can be accessed at the USIP website. Vali Nasr is the Majid Khadduri Professor of Middle East Studies and International Affairs at Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies, where he served as the dean between 2012 and 2019. He is also a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's South Asia Center. Between 2009 and 2011, he served as senior advisor to the U.S. Special Representative for Afghanistan and Pakistan. And among his books are The Dispensable Nation, American Foreign Policy in Retreat, as well as Democracy in Iran, History and the Quest for Liberty. And third is Zimmt, a senior researcher at the Institute for National Security Studies at Tel Aviv University in Israel. He is the co-author of the Institute's publication, Strategic Assessment. He's also a research fellow at the Alliance Center for Iranian Studies at Tel Aviv University. He's the author of Iran from Within, State and Society in the Islamic Republic. So if you want to get a complete understanding of Iran, read these books and then come back much better educated. I want to start out at maybe 35,000 feet with Robin and take a look at the confrontation between Israel and Iran within the context of a changing Middle East and in the context of the Gaza war. Are we at an inflection point? Does the informal air defense alliance that manifests in Israel's response to the Iranian attack suggest something new, or was it a one-off that came together because of the particular threat? Robin.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm honored to be on this panel with Dan, of course, and Roz and Vali, all good friends. So what I have to say is kind of largely out of my gut after covering every war, revolution, and uprising in the region over the past 51 years. And in many cases, I actually hope I'm wrong. But let me start off with quick 4 bottom lines to get the conversation started. To answer your question, the first question anyway, yes, the military operations carried out by Israel and Iran in the first month, last month, April of 2024, did mark an inflection point. They moved the longstanding shadow war dating back to 1982 into a direct confrontation, which with much more sophisticated weaponry and involving far longer distances. Both countries demonstrated new daring, new defiance about the implicit limits on how far they would go, which in turn obviously increased the dangers for the whole region. And I suspect we don't know the full scope of what happened behind the scenes, including cyber. But before their confrontation, or the threat of confrontation, had been largely rhetorical. Now it is real. And I don't want to fall into the trap in Washington of hyperventilating about the immediate dangers. And I stress immediate dangers because there is a question about, was this a one-off for now? I actually think that neither Iran nor neither Iran nor Hezbollah, its largest ally, want a war at the moment. And I stress at the moment. And I stipulate Iran and Hezbollah because I think we often kind of conflate all of these different groups in the network of resistance into one lump. All of them as Iranian-backed proxies when they have their own local agendas, their own constituencies, their own capabilities, and their own agendas. I'll leave Roz to talk about Israel's interest in war. But I do fear that it will take a diplomatic miracle to navigate a way out of this tragedy. It has become a catastrophe that has dragged the region and the world back into the 20th century when we're a quarter of the way into the 21st. I think the urgency is playing out at a time that the US is in the midst of a kind of political purgatory during a heightened election and divisive election season, at a time that the US and its European allies don't always agree on how to contain or sanction Iran or confront it, and to prevent its aggression and an escalation. Meanwhile, I think Israel and Iran face the hardest line governments in their histories. In Israel since 1948 independence, and Iran since its 1979 revolution. And I don't think that the politics in either place is likely to change anytime soon, even if its leaders do. Both of the countries are now, or both of the governments, the current governments, are now invested in confrontation for their own survival, because their reputations and their futures are at stake. And it'll take a radical change of positions to prevent a wider confrontation. So the second bottom line is to answer the other half of your question. And yes, we are witnessing the most important strategic realignment in the Middle East in 76 years since the creation of Israel, with political consequences that we see playing out across continents and oceans away, and on campuses across the United States, unfortunately. Until October 7th, Washington had hoped that Saudi Arabia and Israel would finally crack through the most important barrier of the past 76 years and open the way for a broader peace in the region. As most of you know, that deal would have included diplomatic recognition between Israel and Saudi Arabia, as well as US security guarantees for Saudi Arabia, model on what it provides the EU. I think that's a stickier point, but that's a separate issue. It would have marked a different kind of inflection point toward peace rather than toward conflict. Now, over the past 35 years, we've seen only 6 of 22 Arab states have recognized Israel. So Saudi Arabia recognizing Israel could have brought the other 18 into a relationship that would redefine, economics and diplomacy, peace, and the long-term fate of the world's most volatile region. I personally think the diplomacy was not nearly as far along as advertised by Washington, but that was clearly the goal. So during the confrontation between Israel and Iran, we did see for the first time Arab states actively, militarily take Israel's side, support it to prevent greater damage to Israel. And that, I think, was key. So the will among Arab governments, I think, is stronger than it's ever been. But I also think that there are still many differences between much of the Arab world and Israel, and that while there's a will, there is not yet a way to translate that into formal, a formal relationship, a long-term treaty, or something that makes it a tangible and inviolable, regrouping or realignment. My third bottom line is that there are still way too many ifs. And I have to admit, I'm the ultimate pessimist. I'm not the person who thinks the glass is half full or half empty. I'm the one who says there's no water in the glass at all. So I warn you. But I think there are too many ifs. Realignment would mean there'd have to be an end to the war in Gaza, that there'd have to be an Israeli agreement to form a viable, and I stress viable, Palestinian state. It would require the Palestinian factions who've been divided since 2006 to come together politically in a way that they could form a government, a viable government. They could agree strategically on recognizing Israel and engaging with Israel and creating a viable, and again, viable security force to rein in its own extremists like Hamas. I also worry about the flip side, and we don't talk about that enough. If the realignment does happen, I think there are two dangers. One is that I worry that a realignment will lead Iran's ultra hardliners to conclude that they need to move forward on a bomb. Tehran had made a significant stride since Trump walked away from the nuclear deal in 2018. But as it sees the Arab world, backed by the United States and Europe, aligned with Israel, it may feel that as a deterrent, still as a deterrent, it needs to move ahead on its nuclear program. And the other danger, I think, is that if there is the kind of realignment that we talk about, that groups the US, Israel, the Arab world, that Iran will try to grow much closer to Russia and China, and there's a real danger there. Just 10 years ago, we were at a point that we thought, we believed that the world's 6 major powers could engage Iran to limit its nuclear program. We're at a very different place today, so beware what we wish for, or at least think through the consequences. There are good sides and there are bad sides of a realignment. And finally, and this is where the future I think remains much fuzzier, that answering these questions in absolutes is going to be tough. The worst may well be yet to come. Israel has demonstrated both defensive and offensive superiority in the recent confrontation with Iran. It put Iran on notice that there is no place or space save for its military, particularly its Revolutionary Guard. Iran's attack, by contrast, accomplished absolutely nothing, especially notable since it has the largest missile arsenal in the region. Israel won military support, in many ways unprecedented, from the US, France, and Jordan to intercept and down Iran's weaponry. thus signaling Iran's growing isolation as well as ineptitude. U.S. warplanes and air defense systems intercepted more than 80 suicide drones and 6 ballistic missiles, about a quarter of what was fired. But U.S. engagement also demonstrated that Israel needs outside support in order to counter Iran. And that's very important when you think through the bottom line. And it's not clear how long the U.S. will remain committed to Israel to that extent, given its priorities elsewhere in the world. So Israel won the first round, but questions loom about the strategy of both countries in the near term. Israel has often played the short game with Iran and its proxies. It has detected the challenges and managed to intercept or preempt the threats kinetically. It also has a long track record of being able to destroy the military infrastructure, to intercept arms transfer and kill key leaders in Iran's axis of resistance. And it has the bomb in its back pocket. Yet Israel also has no long-term strategy beyond unrealistic platitudes about defeating Iran or defeating its allies. And diplomacy, as I've mentioned, seems moribund at best for now. Meanwhile, Iran, I think, and finally, Iran is playing a longer game across the Middle East. It's built the largest missile arsenal in the region. The Pentagon has. The Pentagon claims that Iran has now achieved something called overmatch, that it unleashed everything it had, that Israel probably could not fully defend itself. It used only a fraction of its assets in the attack on Israel. It is estimated to have thousands of ballistic missiles and cruise missiles and hundreds of drones. And again, it's built the most powerful military alliance across the region in Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. And together they've created havoc in the Middle East and interrupted international shipping in one of the world's most important sea lanes. So in the final bottom line, I think that one of the things we need to think about as we're discussing this is that whatever happens short term in tit-for-tat operations, a military threshold has been crossed. Yet I don't think either side can win militarily in either a conventional or unconventional sense anytime in the near future. And I'll turn it back to Dan.
Well, thank you, Robin. You certainly have laid out a complete agenda, which will give Vali and Raz a lot to chew on. Let me turn to Vali. In addition to commenting on the many issues that Robin raised, try to dissect, if you can, Iran's thinking. Israel had been attacking Iranian proxies for quite some time, for years. It certainly was a bit of a qualitative change by killing a couple of generals and hitting their diplomatic facility. But what really prompted the response that we saw, and what does it mean in terms of larger Iranian thinking going ahead?
Well, thank you, Dan, for inviting me to this session. It's great to be here with Raz and Robin and yourself. So I think, the issue was not necessarily the killing of the generals. Israel had killed Iranian generals in Syria before. It was the targeting of the Iranian consulate, which Iran chose to interpret, as the supreme leader said, whether it's in accordance to international law, et cetera, or not, is immaterial here, that's Iranian soil. And Iran interpreted this message as essentially Israel saying that it's not only willing to escalate with Iran, but it's willing to do so anywhere and at any time of its own choosing. I think initially the Iranian inclination was not to take the bait, because they did assume that this was a deliberate strategy of diverting attention from Gaza. The very first signals was not, talked about strategic patience, et cetera. But I think ultimately they came to the conclusion that unless they responded and at least send a signal that there's always a potential cost to Israel escalating or targeting wherever it wants, that there's no reason why Israel would stop at the consulate in Damascus, that it could then target other people, target much higher level people in Damascus or in Beirut, or carry out very high level targets within Iran itself, which would then be much more, would bring them closer to war much more. And so the decision was made to retaliate. My read of the way it folded out is a bit different. I think they telegraphed from the very beginning that the attack will not come from Lebanon, that it will come from Iran. That made for a very different defense strategy for Israel and the United States. That they all along, were in communication with the U.S. back and forth, and with European governments and Arab governments as well. And you could even interpret this that actually, in an ironic way, it ended European diplomatic isolation of Iran. I mean, British and German foreign secretaries had not talked to their counterpart in Iran since the start of the protests in Iran a year and a half ago, and Iran's support for Russia in Ukraine. But the point they wanted to make was the fact that if Israel hits, there will be a retaliation. So the calculation they wanted in Washington and Jerusalem to shift, that they could escalate with Iran without any possibility of a hit back. And in their view, it was a success. I mean, largely the calculation in the region shifted. The United States, Europe, and the Arab governments had about 14 days of very nervous look at the region, a possibility of an escalation. They had to put enormous amount of diplomatic effort on both sides in Tehran and Jerusalem to make sure that this doesn't escalate. And their assumption is that going forward, the U.S. is now going to monitor Israeli behavior much, much more closely. And that's exactly what Iran wanted. In a sense that the idea that Israel basically informed the United States that the attack on the Damascus embassy was going to happen after the F-35s were already in the air, that it didn't think much of escalating the situation without monitoring Washington, is likely not to happen again. And I think that's the view also in Europe, and it's also the view in the Arab world. On the issue of realignment, I actually don't see it necessarily. I mean, it's greatly dependent on the Gaza situation. I mean, the Arab world is basically pincered by its own population and the fact that it doesn't see an end to the Gaza war. I think the Iran-Israel escalation showed that the real two powers in this region that really matter are Iran and Israel, not the Arab world. The Arab world is on the sidelines. It's Iran and Israel are the main protagonists in this war in Gaza. They're the main military forces, and the stability of the region really depends on how their rivalry goes forward. So the Arab world is in between, and the Arab world doesn't want to be caught in the middle of this, for the reason that the air defense that we saw unfold was to defend Israel, not the Arab world. And in fact, the more the Arab world comes close to the idea of defending Israel, the more they increase danger to themselves. The fastest Iranian ballistic missiles probably can make it to Israel from Iran in 12 minutes. They could make it to Abu Dhabi or Dubai or Riyadh within seconds. There is no Iron Dome that's going to protect them. And they don't want to essentially get in the middle of this. Even Jordan was very quick to say that they participated in shooting down the drones, not to support Israel, but to support violation of their own airspace. And so, in a way, the message of the drones and missiles and Iran's willingness to be reckless and be so over the top was also a message to the Arabs. And I actually think that, in the past few days, UAE actually told the United States that it does not want its air bases be used for any operations in Yemen or Iraq, which is where Iranian proxies are, as well as, I guess, on Iran itself, which basically says that, we just don't want to be in the middle of this. And they're going to actually get closer to China and Russia, exactly because China and Russia are much better positioned to protect them from Iran than the United States is. And if you looked at Yemen, it's not the United States that's protecting Saudis and UAE from the Houthis right now. It's the Iranians with pressure from Russia and China that are doing it. And so that makes a very different strategic calculus, in my opinion. Now, Ross can speak to actually how much appetite there is in Israel to satisfy Saudi demands about two-state solution. But I think we're moving into an area where, all of our concern with whether Saudi Arabia recognizes Israel or not does not address the larger security question in this region. It is about Iran and Israel and how the two of them are now increasingly willing to basically come out of the shadow war, as Robin said, and engage in direct conflict with one another. And unless that somehow is contained, or at least we have mechanisms to actually prevent it from escalating completely by surprise and aggressively, the region can end up in war in the next 2-3 years, regardless of what happens with the Arab world and Israel. And I think that to me is the main outcome of this of what happened in April. That the region is now really between Iran and Israel.
Thank you, Vali. So, Roz, put on two hats. One, putting yourself into the shoes of Israeli decision makers, the prime minister, the war cabinet, the coalition, and then wearing your own hat analytically. You've heard now Robin say that Israel won this round. Vali suggested it was more of a draw, with both sides accomplishing their purposes. Has Israel achieved deterrence in this respect? Are we going to see a return to the shadow war? How do you see things unfolding in this period ahead?
So thank you, Dan, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with Robin and Vali. Look, I think it's very important to look at the Israeli retaliation to the Iranian attack mostly as a compromise. It was a compromise between, on the one side, Israeli need to show that Israel cannot tolerate a direct attack by Iran on its territory, and therefore some message had to be relayed. And on the other hand, and my sense is that Israel certainly didn't want to be engaged in a full-scale confrontation with Iran. This is not my sense. My sense, since the beginning of the war, is that Israel wants to concentrate on Gaza and trying to achieve its goals and its objectives in Gaza, which, by the way, haven't been very successful. Let's admit that. And if I look at the Israeli priorities right now, Gaza is still the #1 priority. Then the second priority is trying to have some kind of arrangement or perhaps settlement with Hezbollah concerning the possibility of removing Hezbollah from the southern part of Lebanon. So this might be the second priority. If Israel wants to expand the war, it will certainly be towards Hezbollah and not towards Iran. And Iran right now is at the most at the third priority when it comes to the Israeli decision making. So I certainly don't think that the Israeli message was that we want to be engaged in a full-scale confrontation with Iran. By the way, I don't think that was the message of the killing of Hassan Mahdavi in this building near the Iranian embassy. I know and I agree, but this was some of the voices heard in Iran, that this was a kind of a trap put by Israel in order to move forward towards Iranian-US or Iranian-Israeli confrontation. That's not my understanding. I think that it was more to be understood within Israeli willingness to degrade the capabilities of both Hezbollah and Iran in Syria and Lebanon. There was certainly a miscalculation on the Israeli side of what kind of reaction Iran will come up with, but it wasn't a decision made in order to bring the war. And that brings me to your question about deterrence. Look, as you probably know, speaking about deterrence in Israel since October 7th, when this one of the conceptions which collapsed regarding the issue of Hamas being deterred by Israel, deterrence has almost become a taboo in Israel since October the 7th, and that goes for both sides. So as we know today, and we should have known that before, but certainly since October the 7th, deterrence works until it doesn't, and therefore we will have to see over time, did Iran and did Israel get the message of both sides? Now, when I look at the Iranian message to Israel, and as Vali said, it was very clear that the message Iran wanted to convey to Israel, we want to restore our deterrence vis-a-vis Israel. We want to establish a new equation so that the next time you, the Israelis, decide to target Iranian commander in Syria, you will have to think twice, and you will have to take into consideration the possibility of direct attack from Iran against Israel. Whether this message was accepted by Israel, I'm not sure. If you would ask me a week ago, what would be the impact of the Iranian attack against Israel, I would say, well, look, there has been 3 weeks since the last Israeli attack against inside Syria. But then came last Thursday, I think, and we saw Israeli attack inside Syria, not against Iranian targets. It was probably a Hezbollah target. But I certainly can't rule out the possibility that in the future we will see continued Israeli efforts against Iranian assets or Iranian commanders in Syria. I hope we won't see the same attack near the Iranian embassy. But I'm not sure that if the message of Iran was that we want a new equation to be established between Iran and Israel, this message was accepted by Israel. On the other hand, when I look at the message Israel wanted to convey to Iran, I'm not sure that this was as successful as well. Was Iran surprised by the fact that Israel managed to defend itself from more than 300 missiles and drones? I don't think Iran was surprised. Actually, when you look at Iranian officials, even in the last few days, they emphasize again and again. If we knew that most of the missiles and drones are going to be intercepted by Israel and its allies. But if we wanted to cause more damage, if we wanted to demolish the military bases in Israel, we could have used a second attack against Israel, or we could have done that without taking all this time before attacking Israel. So I don't think that was a surprise for Iran. Was Iran surprised by the fact that its aerial defense was penetrated by Israel in this attack against near Isfahan? I don't think so. The Iranians are well aware of the flows of their aerial defense. If they were not aware of that, they wouldn't have tried to upgrade their defense, including with the support of Russia. Does Iran really think right now that there is a growing possibility following this attack near Isfahan, near the nuclear facilities in Isfahan? Do they think that they anticipate an Israeli attack against the nuclear facilities in Iran in the near future? I don't think so. I think that still Iran assesses that the possibility of an Israeli military attack against the nuclear facilities in Iran right now seems quite unlikely, as we are still in the middle of war, and certainly with the U.S. reluctance to support such an attack. So I think that at the end of the day, the question of whether the messages of both sides were realized by the other side, we will have to see, wait and see. And therefore, I think that what Robin mentioned is much more important than the message itself, and that is that April 2024, in my view, has presented a new phase or a new layer into this Israeli-Iranian confrontation. because there is. It doesn't mean, of course, that this shadow war is going to disappear. It doesn't mean that Iran is not going to use its partners or its proxies against Israel. It doesn't mean that Syria will not continue to be served as a field of collision between Israel and Iran. We will probably see all those layers in the future as well. But the new thing is that another additional layer was added to this confrontation, to this strategic confrontation between Iran and Israel. For the first time, both states decided to attack each other on their own territories. And I think this will have to be taken into consideration by both countries. I have to say, I'm very concerned with this development, because one of the things we have to remember, even before Iran turns nuclear, or even before Iran decides to weaponize, is that there are no channels of communication between Israel and Iran. There are no channels which could be used in order to de-escalate things between Israel and Iran. And I think one of the most important issues we saw in April is what this lack of channels of communication between the two states could do in referring to the possibility of miscalculation. Just last remark concerning the Saudi-Israeli normalization. I personally think it's going to be impossible for this Israeli government to work towards the resuming the normalization talks with Saudi Arabia. There is no way, and I'm not an expert on Saudi Arabia, but there is no way the Saudis are going to be satisfied with anything less than at least some kind of roadmap towards an Israeli-Palestinian reconciliation. I don't even speak about the two-state solution. Any kind of Israeli statements concerning the possibility of a future settlement with the Palestinian Authority might work. But I really don't see this present government controlled by Netanyahu and his hawkish hardliners moving towards this kind of agreement. So I think that only, or one of the conditions for any kind of resuming talks between Israel and Saudi Arabia will be a different kind of government in Israel.
So the three of you have painted a very rich portrait of a very volatile strategic environment. It may be that deterrence, even if it's a misused term and out of vogue, may have been restored or may not. I want to turn, though, before coming back to this, to the intersection of what you've been talking about with domestic politics, something that, Roz, you turned to right at the end of your remarks. Number one, we have two governments that are in some ways quite weak and volatile internal political situation. You've had protest movements in both countries. Neither has been very successful, but also neither has been tamped down entirely. What are the prospects of domestic politics changing? You have a very old supreme leader. You have a worn-out Israeli prime minister. What's going to be this intersection between politics and policy? Let's start with Vali, and then Roz, and then Robin.
It's a very interesting question. I mean, in Iran, obviously, there's a lot of focus on succession, more so, I would say, on protest. I mean, I think the Iranian leadership is not as concerned about right now popular unrest, particularly because they survived the worst of it. But the issue of succession does loom over the horizon. But unlike in Israel, that you might say, okay, elections can have a date if we get to that point, succession doesn't have a very clear date. So it could be 6 months from now, or it could be 5 years from now. I think, you know, the larger issue about the direction of these countries, yes, it does have a popular side to it. You know, Ross can speak to this segment of Israelis who might want a very different kind of a relationship with Palestinians, Arabs, ultimately even with Iran, or there's a big chunk of Iranians who want to end the country's isolation, be integrated into the world. But when it comes to this actual conflict between Israel and Iran, and particularly the threat perception that the populations may feel from having watched what happened in April, I don't think plays against the powers that, at least in Iran, that are currently in control. In other words, it's not. It actually plays to a sense of deeper sense of nationalism, defending the country's security, etc. And if the tempo of this conflict rises, I think it will overshadow the domestic economic issues and other issues that are there. And I also do think that the very fact that Iran took 2 weeks to respond to Israel, and that it was very clear that their initial inclination was to go a different direction, perhaps, suggests that this does play into the way the supreme leader is thinking about stability right now and stability into the future. I mean, I would say it's possible to think that he made a decision to go to sort of be very aggressive with number of missiles, etc., while also communicating with the US and Arabs and Europeans, exactly to avoid a much more dangerous escalation that could have come, with killing of let's say, a Revolutionary Guard commander inside of Iran itself, for instance. And it also goes to a point that Robin raised early on, that why Iran is actually not looking for a bigger conflict. It's not just because they might not have the military capability or not want to fight the US. It's also, I don't think, in an environment of succession, the supreme leader would be looking for a much broader war that then a successor would not be able to manage. So I think that element of domestic politics is more important than the protest. The way he's thinking about the next 5 years for Iran, or when he hands it over, whether it's his son or some other leader, I think certain degree of stability, predictability, let's maybe better than stability, both domestic but also regionally vis-a-vis US, vis-a-vis Israel, is absolutely necessary, I think, for Iran, and that is a factor to consider.
Raz, the intersection of politics, protests, and strategy.
Yeah, so one comment about succession in Iran and then about succession in Israel, which I find less interesting, I have to admit. That the only positive thing I could say about Supreme Leader Khamenei is that at least until now, he certainly used to be a quite cautious leader, trying to avoid taking too many risks. I hope we still see Khamenei as cautious, because there have been some reports saying that perhaps his decision to attack Israel might indicate that he's not as cautious as he used to be. I'm not too sure about that, despite the fact that he's certainly circled by more hardliners than before. But I certainly, I'm not sure that the next supreme leader, whether it's Mujtaba Raisi or any other supreme leader, will be as cautious as Khamenei. So I usually try to convince my fellow Israelis that perhaps Khamenei is the best option right now, and we might miss Khamenei at some point. Going back to Israel, look, I have to admit that I have to share the pessimism of Robin on this issue, and I'll tell you why. Because even before October the 7th, I didn't see a real difference, I have to admit, between the so-called government of change under Bennett and Lapid when it comes to both the Iranian issue and the Palestinian issue, and Netanyahu's government. When it comes to Iran, you probably all remember the policy carried out by Bennett and Lapid when it comes to Israeli continued efforts, covert activities inside Iran, when it comes to Iranian efforts inside Syria. So I even before October 7th, I didn't really see any real difference between the politicians in Israel, between the more centrist and the more hardliners in the right when it comes to Iran. No Israeli government, in my view, is going to tolerate the possibility of Iranian weaponization. No Israeli government is going to tolerate the continued efforts by Iran to militarily entrench itself in Syria. And certainly today, the atmosphere right now in Israel is that Israel should not allow for any potential military threat to evolve, whether it's from Hezbollah, from the Palestinians, from Iran. So even if there is a change in the Israeli government, and even if we see someone like Benny Gantz becoming prime minister of Israel, and my personal views are quite known. I'm not a big fan of Prime Minister Netanyahu, to say the least. But I'm not sure that any other prime minister in Israel would be able to change dramatically the policy towards Iran and also towards the Palestinians. Whether a more centrist prime minister could take some initiatives in order to pave the way, for example, for a new regional architecture by making some promises on the day after the war, when it comes to Israeli efforts to normalize its relationship with Saudi Arabia, with engage in some elements within the Palestinian Authority in Gaza, that might happen. But when it comes to Iran, when it comes to Hezbollah, when it comes to Hamas, even to the two-state solution, my sense is that it's going to be very difficult to see a real difference between this current government and any kind of future government, at least in the foreseeable future.
So, Robin, in addition to commenting on the politics of Israel and Iran, we have our own politics. A president who's under some degree of siege from within his own party, a candidate who would probably not be any better vis-a-vis the protest movement against the current administration's policies. How does this all play into American thinking moving ahead, both with respect to the Israel-Iran issue, but also directly the American-Iran issue? The Obama administration having brought about or helped bring about the JCPOA, and the Trump administration having torn it down. What does it look like moving ahead?
Well, I cover foreign wars, not domestic wars. So I'm not sure I'm the best person. You're probably better able to answer that question, and we should all pose it to you. My instinct is that both candidates face a real conundrum about what to do given the divisions and the way this is playing out, especially on campuses in the United States. It's a difficult moment where Jewish Americans feel afraid, even if many of the kids who are on campuses are demonstrating because they want an end to the war. I mean, this is where you've seen a polarization in interpreting what the goals are. And I think that's where it gets very dangerous. I worry a lot about how the Gaza war has accentuated the tensions within the United States that already existed. When it comes to the internal tensions, how the Iran-Israeli confrontation plays out in terms of the domestic constituencies, it's clear. The one point of unity for all Israelis is the threat from Iran and its allies. And I think the irony is that among Iranians, the vast majority actually don't care very much about the Palestinians, but they do care about Israel in some ways because it's seen as the force that is a greater threat to Iran. And so I think it's the one point of unity among the governments and the populations.
You know, none of us here focuses directly on Saudi Arabia, but every one of us has brought it up at some point in this conversation. And of course, you know, not long ago, there was the Chinese effort at the beginning of rapprochement. Maybe that may be too big a word. Let's talk for a moment about the Saudi factor here. What's the Saudi interest vis-a-vis Iran and Israel? What's the Saudi interest vis-a-vis the United States, Iran, and Israel? Would take a scenario in which the Gaza war does wind down in the next couple of months, let's say. The hostages over a period of time are returned, and things return to a challenging but relatively quieter status quo, which would bring back to the fore the prospect of Saudi-Israel normalization under the auspices of a U.S. defense treaty and so forth. Is that going to make a big difference in the region? Are the Saudis interested in a regional balance of power, as President Obama suggested some years ago, or are they interested in an alliance that would tend to want to overshadow Iran's growing influence? Roz, let's start with you this time.
So I'm not an expert in Saudi Arabia, but I do think that, first of all, it's important in my view to come up with this new regional architecture, which will be based on the resumption of talks between Israel and Saudi Arabia. I certainly share Vali's views that we should not anticipate, or we should not expect the Saudis to join a kind of Israeli-Arab coalition against Iran. Only today we saw the Saudi ambassador taking place in the nuclear conference in Isfahan alongside Iranian officials. And certainly since September 2019, since the Iranian attack on Saudi Arabia, the Saudis have realized that have reached the conclusion that they should try to have I wouldn't say friendly relations because they are not going to be friends, but certainly a kind of constructive relations with Israel and with Iran. Sorry, and even if we see the resumption of talks between Israel and Saudi Arabia, this should not necessarily come at the expense of the Iranian-Saudi rapprochement. Now, I think that. Regardless of what's going to happen with Israel and Saudi Arabia, between the United States and Saudi Arabia, it's important to come up for Israel, I think, and for other regional players to come up with an alternative to the Iranian version of what is the new Middle East. And when I listen to Iranian officials, for example, the Rahim Safavi, the ex-commander of the Revolutionary Guards, and the present one of the advisor of Supreme Leader, saying that there is a new Middle East, but this new Middle East is controlled by Iran and the so-called axis of resistance. I think that it's vital to come up with an alternative. Now, whether this kind of regional architectures could constrain Iran everywhere, probably not. It won't have a major impact on what Iran can or can't do in Lebanon. It might not have a major impact on what Iran can or can't do with Iraq. But I think that, as we know, one of the reasons for this kind of success story of Iran in the Arab Middle East over the last decade was the instability and the fact that the government and the central government in the Middle East have been so weak. And therefore I think that if the United States, if Israel, if the Arab players in the region want to try and constrain Iran, it's important not to use just military kinetic capabilities, which are important. And I think what Israel has been doing in Syria is important. And it's not enough to use economic pressure on Iran. A strategy has to deal with their neighbors. What enables Iran to exercise its involvement and its influence in the Middle East. And that requires different policies towards Lebanon, towards Iraq, towards Palestine, towards Yemen. But the basic thing is that we have to look for alternatives for what Iran has been doing. And one of the ways to do that is to think about how to expand this political process in the Middle East between Israel and the more moderate players in the region.
So one quick follow-up before we move on. One of your colleagues at INSS, Ophir Winter, published this morning or yesterday a piece that suggested that what happened during the Iranian-Israel confrontation might provide a stepping stone for Israel to restore better relations with Jordan. But we heard today that Jordan acted simply on the basis of its own interests, the violation of its airspace. Do you associate with this idea that there's an opening here for rebuilding a relationship with Jordan that has been badly damaged by the Gaza war?
I personally think that as long as the war in Gaza continues, we will see no improvement of ties between Israel and the other players in the region, including Jordan, including Egypt, including Turkey, by the way, which has just recently joined the economic boycott against Israel. And I think we have to be very modest in what we expect. You know, even those talks about what can we expect from the Arab states following their assistance to Israel to intercept the Iranian missiles and drones. I do think that following the war in Gaza, there might be an opportunity to rediscuss again the possibility of a kind of military intelligence, operational cooperation between Israel and some of the Arab states against the Iranian threat of missiles and drones. But again, there is a very big difference between that and the possibility of forming a kind of a more aggressive coalition between Israel and the Arab states against Iran. But again, the first condition for any kind of improving ties between Israel and the Arab states is to put an end to the war in Gaza, trying to, of course, to achieve our objectives when it comes to the neutralization of Hamas ruling and military capabilities in Gaza, and then move forward to the next stage, which is even more important, that is to translate the military objectives into a kind of political achievements.
Robin, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Israel, the US, how do you see this complex playing into what we've been talking about?
Well, we're talking about Saudi Arabia as if, you know, we're talking about traditional Saudi Arabia and the kingdom, so forth, when we're really talking about one man, Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince. And it's clear he wants to be the hegemon of the region, he wants to be the Nasr or the Saddam Hussein. He wants to be the man considered the foremost strong man in the whole region. And I think he has broader ambitions. I think he's playing a very clever game right now. I think down the road, he sees for development in terms of what he wants from the United States, a possibility of better relations or some kind of relationship with Israel. But it comes at a huge cost for the United States that I think will be very controversial once the full terms are fully understood and debated on the Hill. I think we're in the background of all of this, we're seeing a competition between Iran and Saudi Arabia to be the most powerful Muslim power in the region. And this gets to not just traditional Persian Arab tensions, it gets to Shiite Sunni tensions. It plays out on a lot of different levels. And I think we tend to forget this in the discussion about the Gaza war and Israel, Iran, and so forth.
And Vali, this balance of power idea that Obama had, the JCPOA as a factor in calming the waters in the region or roiling the waters, the idea of Saudi-Israel rapprochement, Saudi-Iran rapprochement, how do you see it?
It's a very good point. I mean, I think the point that Robin raised, that we should not, look back and imagine the Saudi Arabia or the region of the past as a model for what we're dealing, is actually very apt. I mean, as I said it early on, this region is not about Iran versus Saudi Arabia, which was the story of yesteryear. It's not about Iran versus Israel. And so the way this issue of Iran versus Saudi Arabia plays out is actually quite different. Saudi Arabia is now not the main sort of regional rival of Iran. Is at best we can look at it as a balancer or a decider that both Iran and Israel are both trying to leverage in their own ways. We forget they both are trying to are suiting Saudi Arabia or trying to, woo it in one direction or another. Now, again, a great point that Robin made is that looking at it from Saudi perspective, what does MBS want? And I think she's absolutely right. He wants Saudi Arabia to be the premier power in the region and perhaps be even a premier global player at a much larger level. And one of the issues that he has a problem with is that Saudi Arabia at some level is really irrelevant to this conflict. I mean, I think we're over-focused on what normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel can do at this moment. I mean, Raz puts it very well that, Israel has an agenda in Gaza, right or wrong. It needs to see this war end. Its second agenda is then Hezbollah and the northern border, so all these IDPs can return to their home and be comfortable there. And then it's about Iran. So is Israel really going to bend backwards at this moment in time to accommodate Saudi Arabia? I don't think so. And I'm reminded of something President of Israel said at Davos in January, that no politician in Israel can right now go to the polls on the back of agreeing or accepting a two-state solution or a Palestinian state next door. I'm not an expert. I'm just paraphrasing what he said. So Saudi Arabia really does not have a hand to play here. Qatar had a hand to play because of its relationship with Hamas. Egypt has a hand to play because of its relationship with Hamas and Rafah. They are the ones that are meeting Bill Burns or the Americans, not the Saudis, right? The Saudis are dangling, I think, this issue of normalization just to be relevant, if you would, here. But they're not going to be the decider going forward. Secondly, I would say to Robin's point again, what is this young man's ambition? It's all economic. It's all about Vision 2030. It's all about attracting direct foreign investment. I mean, just last week, there was this big event in the desert, Davos in the desert, literally with World Economic Forum. It was all about, shining economically vibrant Saudi Arabia going forth. You can't have the World Cup in Saudi Arabia or another big airline or NEOM moving forward if missiles are flying all over you, right? So in the end, they don't want to sign up to anything that would ultimately mean a greater danger in the region, right? If Saudis or American investors that are going to be investing in Saudi Arabia are going to be thinking, or in the back of their mind, they're going to be like Israelis living on Lebanon's borders, they're not going to go there, right? So both of these countries, UAE and Saudi Arabia, cannot afford to be on Iran's target list. In my opinion, they're not going to sign up to a tight alliance against Iran, because that actually makes things much more dangerous for them, not less dangerous. It's going to undermine all of the attraction they want to make to direct foreign investment. And then I go back to something I said earlier. The only thing that American defense of Israel in April 13th showed is that America is willing to defend Israel. It has not, changed the narrative the Arabs believe happened in Abqeir. For those who don't know, when Iran attacked oil facilities in Saudi Arabia, and the most Israeli president until then, Donald Trump, who also may be back potentially in a year, basically did nothing about it. So we haven't proven that we're actually willing to defend Saudi Arabia. The only thing we've proven is that we're happy to defend Israel. And part of this, in the echo chamber of the US, we keep saying that the Saudis would love to join an alliance to defend Israel. Why would they? What's in it for them? Are we really signing up to defend them if they're attacked? No, and at the same time, even the prospect of Iran attacking them is not good for business. So I think, and Robbins was very correct that this, new Mohammed bin Salman is playing a very clever game. He, given our initial introduction to him through the Khashoggi, fiasco, he's proven himself to be much more strategic. He's learned on the curve. I think he needs to get to where he needs to get now by navigating between Iran and Israel, and then navigating between the United States and China at the same time, and Russia. And so getting to these fast conclusions that the Saudis are just going to be over themselves to get into an alliance with Israel is to me, let alone, to Roz's point and Robin's point, whether Israel is ready to accommodate them. I think we're getting over our skis, as the saying goes, and it doesn't really solve the problems that we're facing in Gaza or vis-a-vis Iran and Israel potential war over there.
All right, so we have time for my favorite part of my classes at Princeton. After we've done the heavy academics and all the rest, it's the elevator conversation. Okay, so Robin, you get in the elevator with President Biden. You have 3 minutes till he gets to the 40th floor. What do you say to him about this? And Vali, you get in the elevator with the Supreme Leader. And Roz, as much as you don't want to be in the elevator with the Prime Minister, you are. Okay? Robin, 3 minutes.
You said President Obama, and I assume you meant President Biden.
I'm sorry, President Biden.
Yeah,
Yes.
The thing is, both my think tanks forbid me from a kind of prescribing policy. So I'm trying to think of a way around that. I mean, if I were making policy, I guess the best way is to try to use American muscle in ways that I think the United States hasn't, whether it's economically or militarily, with everybody. The problem is we are acting unilaterally. We don't have European partners, and I think we need to do more in kind of banging heads and saying, look, the only way to prevent this is getting more countries on board to sanction Iran so that they feel the cost of all their mischief in the region. And it is, we have to do something about reigning in Israel, particularly on a day that it's announced. I mean, the last 3 days have been catastrophic. And there are news reports now that Biden called Bibi this morning just to say, look, don't do it. And even as Bibi announces that he's going to do it, even if there is a deal. And I think somehow there needs to be an exertion of American leverage here in a lot of different ways that we haven't mobilized the international community. We haven't used the leverage we have with Israel particularly. And I think we need to do more. And I don't know whether that's the election season or it's the nature of this presidency.
Okay. All right, Vali. If I said Obama, I should probably say Khomeini, but no, we'll do the current Supreme Leader.
I would say, the answer, my suggestion would be very careful, right? Okay, you think you made your point about deterrence, and right now we're in a lull, but what you have to be very careful not to overreach. And right now, the Arabs, the United States, the Europeans all want to, and probably Israel, at least as Roz mentioned, might want a certain sort of a red lines or stability. And I think in the post-April scenario, I think the short run, it's good for Iran if it also seeks agreeing to certain code of conduct that would basically keep the region at a level of stability going forward.
And Roz.
So I would tell Prime Minister Netanyahu, look, Prime Minister, you had a chance before October 7th to be remembered in Israel as the one who is responsible for the Abraham Accords, for the normalization with Saudi Arabia. And then came October 7th, and you are right now the responsible as Prime Minister for the worst thing which happened to Israel since its establishment. And now you can choose between two kinds of legacies. Either you want to be remembered as the one who is responsible for this disaster of October the 7th, or you want to be remembered as the one who used this catastrophe and turned that into an opportunity to renew talks with Saudi Arabia. And that requires you to send those hardliner ministers out of your government, to use the opportunity to bring inside the more centrist parts of your government and move forward towards a kind of settlement, regional settlement. This will not only make sure that our military objectives are met in Gaza, but also to use that as the preference for a new kind of and better kind of Middle East. You can do that.
Wow. So my challenge is to figure out how to get the three of you into these elevators to impart some good guidance and advice to these leaders. As anticipated, this has been a terrific discussion, and I very much appreciate Robin, Vali, and Raz, your joining. I hope our audience enjoyed it as well. There were a couple of questions. We didn't get to one of them on Hezbollah, but it was covered a little bit. But I very much appreciate your taking the time to do this. And let's hope that the next time we meet, we can be celebrating some positive achievement. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.